from the RTS came the LTS.
Kind of crazy, you know, the shock up on top, the curves of the seat stays.
It was a bike that delivered.
We had the best of the best in every level.
You know, Mikey should be beating me at this race, but maybe not by this much.
We knew that the LTS was a great design. We always wanted more.
And he ain't gonna stop, and I mean just slam it.
You know, the early models of those things broke.
Unless you're gonna try everything and fail, how do you think you get better at things?
Great thing about Jim, it was his love for racing and his passion for the sport. That's what drove the design.
You know, in looking back at every design and everything I did, yes, some were successful, some were just plain good all-American turds, you know?
Yes, the Lobos. Wasn't a fan of the Lobo.
The idea was we need to get this thing as low as we can. Everything as low as we can. We need longer arms to get, you know, a better linear, closer to a linear wheel path.
I felt like the rear end, I could just never get the rear end to settle down.
Yeah, it's gonna offer more travel, it's gonna get the CG lower, but it wasn't structurally sound.
You know, and you can't do that in downhill racing. You know, once you start questioning your equipment or your confidence.
It was just the wrong thing.
You know, maybe a certain section you just can't clear as clean as others. And you're just like, oh man.
You know, sometimes you throw the dart, it doesn't hit the dartboard.
It was just constantly evolving. And yeah, there come a point that where we realized that the way that bike and all bikes pivoted, you reach a point of limitation. You know, no matter what you do, you can't go any further than that.
It's like I was thinking about the Lobo and the thermoplastic. They all set out to solve a problem, but there was no supporting cast. You couldn't manufacture a composite, you know, carbon structure for the upper arm. So it became way too difficult to be stable, so the only solution was throw more weight at it. That ruins it. And all of a sudden, you know, it's like you don't keep chasing a bad design. And I just took a fresh sheet of paper and said, okay, I got to rethink this.
And that's when Jimmy had come up with a thing called the iDrive.
There's no reason that the bottom bracket can't float as an independent body and take the forces that are acting upon the bottom bracket and direct them into the chassis in different environments to cause things to happen to be a better bike. I just said, I'm starting over. I'm going to suspend the bottom bracket as an independent body. I'm going to understand, and I spent thousands of hours on, you know, doing, you know, analysis software, just trying to understand every force, and I just watched numbers.
When he first showed me the iDrive, I just looked at it and thought this was freaking rocket science stuff. I couldn't even figure out where that guy came up with it. A couple of guys at the shop goes, what the hell is that? You know, we were all looking at it like it was foreign.
It was kept a secret under wraps, and then it was finally unveiled. To the marketing department, it was unveiled in a substantially different way, because even though the RTS was unique and the LTS was unique and required some bullet points to pitch it to people so they can understand it, the iDrive was completely bewildering. You can't see what's going on because half the mechanism is hidden.
Yeah, I remember the advertising campaign that came along with it. We're just trying to understand it. It's like, what?
Unsuspecting enthusiast after another.
Everybody that worked on it put their heart and soul into it, and I thought it came out pretty good for what it was.
All of its defenders are about to meet their end.
It might have been a little over the top.
very good bike, and it's a great step forward for GT.
It just makes it a lot easier. It takes less energy to ride farther and faster.
Oh, gotta love this iDrive! Yeah!
The iDrive bike I thought was amazing.
It was so beyond everybody else.
It made a good rider a better rider.
When I was racing slaloms and four cross and stuff, I would go to every race with two bikes, a hardtail and a full suspension bike. If it was a faster or a rougher course, even like a Sea Otter dual slalom, iDrive was perfect for that race.
So that bike overall was just amazing. I mean, it was a big jump.
I didn't even have a GT iDrive downhill bike. I borrowed one from the GT R&D department just for that trip. And I remember the first time I rode the show on a full suspension bike, I was laughing.
We want the bicycle to work, and there's a lot of classic Jim Busby quotes, but the one I still use to this day is like, he'd say, you gotta let it eat, you know? It's like, don't, because there was so much of this concern about efficiency and, oh, it's moving too much, it's not firm enough. And it's like, our opinion was, you know, if you're gonna have a suspension bike, it's gotta work.
I felt like I was sitting on a sofa and somebody pushed me off these rocks and drops. It was so plush, and that changed my whole perception, and I actually lost a little bit of respect of those free riders from the North Shore, because now I go like, hey, on a full suspension bike, it's not as gnarly as I thought it would be, you know?
The DHI is a great example of a bike that, you know, we actually had a lot of failures on the track because we started going faster and faster and faster.
For the time, it was cutting edge. Back then, courses weren't as steep and gravity oriented as they are now. So there was pedaling and acceleration, and there's all these different things that you needed to have, as well as just tracking.
The bike was the quietest bike out there. We had to develop actually a floating chain guide. What we ended up with was a chain guide that was also tracked to the rear triangle. And so now you're coming down the hill and the DHI is like, and the bike behind it sounds like the guy's hauling like a silverware cabinet. It's like, and it's hard to go fast on a bike like that.
I mean, hands down to so many of those engineers who kind of started dialing it in and bringing the technology now to the point where we have it today.
That bike solved the riddle.
When the iDrive first came out, it looked a bit complicated, which confused or scared some people.
Like, you needed special tools to work on it, and
you have to rotate the not the bottom bracket, it's just, I can't remember. Yeah, line up the dots thing, you're just like,
The next generation was to try to address those problems.
In around 2003-04, you know, we came out with another series of iDrive bikes, still the iDrive technology, and those bikes were more evolved, they were more simple, they were lighter, you know, they could be all, there was very easy tools, like common tools, like a headset tool and an Allen wrench, you could take the whole thing apart.
That's the bottom line, right? Like, gotta make bikes that people can buy and be reliable.
That's when we also introduced like our first free-ride full suspension bike, which was the Ruckus. They all had the iDrive technology back then, and I rode those bikes. I remember taking it to Cuba when we traversed Cuba in the footsteps of Che Guevara. And
I think that's one cool thing about the iDrive system. They took this iDrive system and they just kept evolving it and making it better and better and better, instead of scrapping it and trying to design something new.
But even if Busby on paper would say, doesn't work as good as the original, you know what, it probably works good enough, because it's just about getting people out there without having to have all this, like, you know, like you said, like a slide rule and a calculator every time they ride. You know, they're like, well, what's the shock ratio and the spring rate? Blah, blah. Who cares, man? The bicycle is supposed to be simple. That's its solution to the world.
GT was doing great, especially in 2010, 11 with that, you know, that series of iDrive, and then again the carbon frames, and they just performed so good, lightweight, you know, very little problems, and low maintenance.
I was also able to be involved with the DHI Carbon project, which was awesome.
Carbon Fury came out, and that was their new downhill bike, and I think that was like the third rendition of iDrive, and it worked awesome. And it was also the first carbon downhill frame that they did in a long time.
It had been in production for cross-country stuff for a while now, and obviously road, but gravity, it was just like, whoa, man, carbon can't work in gravity. And well, it did. We were one of the first ones to really pioneer that.
And it worked incredible. And the riders, all the riders did well. Eric did phenomenal.
I thought, you always heard, oh, it's just going to snap off, man. It catastrophically fails. And but it was awesome. It was it was an awesome development process.
And it was a lot easier to work on, less moving parts. He still had the same advantage of the previous iDrive design, but just simplified.
The ability to paint the molds with carbon, the graphic design team was really able to accentuate all the nuances, and man, the bikes were super sexy and the graphics were cool. It was awesome. I loved it.
Mark Beaumont won on a Carbon Fury in Val di Sole, Italy, and I believe that was in 2010.
And at the time, it was great. I loved the bike. It was cool to be riding carbon. It was cool to be on something new. They look like spaceships.
1 millimeter over would make the bike react completely different.
GT has taken this design and they've reconfigured it.
It's not dumbing it down, it's actually smarting it up.
3 days after I won my first downhill walk-up ever, he never had a moment where he did not feel comfortable. And when you both yourself and the bike together, it's the best feeling ever to cross the finish line.
But you had to be able to trust those bikes, and those bikes delivered.